So what do we have here? Well, we've read the scriptures, and what we have is the transition from the first two portions of Luke into the last portion of Luke. The chapter heading should change here in verse 31, because from this point on, we are either going to Jerusalem or we're in Jerusalem. Obviously, the going to is short, but then we're going to be in Jerusalem, and there's going to be as you already know, because you've read the scriptures and heard the scriptures read over the years, you know what's coming. So we have in the very first here now, having taken the 12 aside. Having taken the 12 aside. And we say aside, it's only one word, but we have taking, and then we have para, which you would understand, para is always alongside. So he pulls them aside, and it's just the 12, because this is something that he needs to tell them. It is, so it's a necessity. By the way, it is a repetition. Turn quickly with me back to Luke chapter 9, verse 22. Luke chapter 9, verse 22. Because we've already seen this, but we haven't seen it in its entirety. Starting in verse 21 of Luke 9, and he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. So some of the things are repeat, but then here in back in 9:22, the suffer many things, that's going to now be expanded. Notice back in chapter 9, verse 22, he strictly forbade them. He commanded them. They were under orders not to repeat what he told them. And notice here, we're on the verge. It's hard to know whether we're 3 months out. I think we're about 3 months out. But going in, he pulls the 12 aside. So as we know from the rest of the gospel, there's usually a plethora of disciples, a whole bunch, perhaps hundreds, plus the looky-loos. And remember, just by way of reminder, that the 12 are already called apostles. They were called to be apostles, because everybody that's following him purposely for the point of following who he is, including the women, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Jesus and Joanna and all those others, they're all disciples. Women are disciples too. So that's just a reminder. It's not the whole point of the message at all, but just a reminder. So he took the 12 aside because he has something that's necessary for them to hear, because it is also preparatory for what's going to happen. So he told them. I don't really want to use the word warn, but, you know, if somebody, I don't know if I've told you, but some people who have come out to camp, there were some people who came out to camp for my retirement party, and they came up to me, they found me and looked at me and said, if I had known the road was that bad, I would not have come out, because of this and this, which, you know, after, almost 50 years of driving that road, it's a shoulder shrug. But for people who drive it for the first time, a little preparation would have been good. If you want to call it warning, that's fine. If you want to call it preparation, that's fine too. So, how does he begin? He said to them, behold. And by now, we know in the book of Luke, when someone says, behold, it's like, yo, hey, I'm talking to you, look. So we know it's important. And this is a little bit of simply a mechanic. We are going up to Jerusalem. Why does he say up? Because geographically, topographically, you go from the Jordan River in this direction. Jerusalem is up. He could have also said over, because they've just come. If you remember, all this time, I realize, and I still don't have the answer, why earlier they were going to Jerusalem. In fact, twice it says that. But we know for the last several chapters anyway, if the Jordan River is here, Andrew, I always get confused when I'm talking to you from the direction. Jerusalem is here, Jordan River is here, and Perea, where they have been traveling through from up above. Remember, Samaria said, we don't want you, so he left Samaria and he's been going this way. And they've just crossed the Jordan River, and they're going to be heading to Jericho, which we'll get to in verse 35, which won't be today. So he says, we're going up to Jerusalem, and there shall be accomplished all the things that have been written through the prophets for or regarding the Son of Man. So this is the first future in this passage. There shall be accomplished. That word accomplished is come to an end, completed, finished. And it's interesting that that particular word is the same word that Jesus used in John chapter 19, verse 30, when he was hanging on the cross and it was done, and he yelled out, it is completed, it is finished. So here he says, there will be accomplished, there will be finished. And it will be that which will be done by, in a sense, someone other than himself. He is the one that it's going to be. We're going to see that in just a moment. He's the object of this activity, and it will be accomplished to him. Obviously, as a part of it, it will also be accomplished by him because he is the subject. But it's going to be done to him and through him. All the things that have been written through the prophets, all the things that have been written through the prophets, have been written is in the perfect tense, which means that it was written back by Isaiah, it was written back by Jeremiah, it was written back by Ezekiel, it was written back by Zechariah. And guess what? None of those things have gone by the way. None of them have stopped. All the things that were there are now going to be happening right here, even as I'm sharing this with you. All the things that have been written through the prophets, so all the prophets I've already mentioned, plus some others, regarding the Son of Man. Two things here. One is Jesus continues to use his own title. That's his own title regarding himself. He doesn't say me. He refers to himself as the Son of Man. That's who he is. So this is all going to be accomplished regarding the Son of Man. That is me. And who is he? Obviously, I've said it so many times, not just in Christmas messages, but he is Emmanuel. He is God with us, God encased in flesh, God incarnate. He is also the Messiah. He is also the Son of God. He's also God the Son. He is also, as he refers to himself in his identification, he is the man of men. He is the Son of Man, his identification with us. All those things and more. So, the second thing regarding all the things that have been written through the prophets, it's more than four. It's actually a dative, which makes it difficult to translate in direct English concerning the Son of Man, about the Son of Man, toward the Son of Man, for the Son of Man. All those work. There's not just one English word that works with that. So all the things that have been written through the prophets, and then you point to the Son of Man. That's more or less what he's talking about. But what does that do? It limits the concept of what's going to be fulfilled. In other words, all the things that have been written through the prophets regarding the Son of Man is limited to this time. there is nothing about that's going to be fulfilled about the millennial prophecies about this, or the tribulation in this. He's specified and limited it to the conclusion, the completion of those things that have pointed to him as, we need to be clear on this, the suffering servant. Okay? There's two, in fact, in Zechariah, I didn't talk about it really last week, and I could have easily. There are two messiahs in the Jews' mind. The suffering servant, and then the coming king. And there's a whole doctrine regarding that. But you and I see only one Messiah. He is the suffering servant, and he is the Messiah, the king. Same person, just two different times. And this is, time-wise, the first advent. The suffering servant is here. So he's presenting all the things fulfilling regarding himself in the first advent as the suffering servant. Are you with me so far? And now we unload, or rather he unloads. Because, or for, and here's the second future passive. He shall be given over to the Gentiles. Now, as near as I can tell, there is no Old Testament prophecy regarding, not the betrayal, it's definitely in the Old Testament, but to the Gentiles, as near as I can remember, there is no Old Testament prophecies regarding Jesus being delivered over to the Gentiles. Is that important? You know why? Because this is the Old Testament, and these are all the prophecies, and delivered over to the Gentiles isn't back here, so where is it coming from? It's coming from him. He knows it. He's sharing it. Because it's coming from who he is as the Son of Man, as the Son of God. He shall be given over. That given over is delivered over. It's the picture of betrayal. So here Jesus is telling him in advance he will be betrayed. He will be delivered over. He will be handed over. Literally, as you would see a felon being handed over to the prison system. Delivered over in a court of law. You've been declared guilty. You are now delivered to the bailiff, who gives him, I don't know the whole process. He gives him to somebody and he ends up behind bars, theoretically. But he doesn't say by whom. See, that's where, when we have communion and I read those passages where it says on the night he was betrayed, this is Jesus saying in advance that that's going to happen. And they're all, as we find in verse 34, it's like, huh? What? Huh? And notice, too, that he is being delivered over to whom? The Gentiles, which is the word ethnos, which is one of the words we use to translate into the word nations. So Jesus, a Jew, is being delivered over, doesn't say by whom, to the nations. This is bad on every level. It's bad on every level. This act is so horrible to a godly Jew. The deliverance of the Messiah into the hands of the nations. Horrible thing. So that's the delivery system. So he shall be given over, delivered, betrayed. That is not the word betrayed, but it's the action of betrayal. And in the notes, and is L, and it seems like and is such a simple word, but if you look through this passage, there's a lot of ands. Because I believe, as both Jesus and then Luke sharing it with us, wanted us, this is, you see this, and, or you see this, and you see this, and it goes on. So Luke puts it in there. And Jesus shares, and he shall be mocked. He shall be mocked. Mocking somebody that you respect. I mean, you see somebody you respect. You give them a title. I have many titles here at Parkhill. The one that's typically used is pastor. But you put yourself aside and you watch somebody else mock that person. And so when he tells the 12 this, the Son of Man will be mocked. It's like, what? Mocked? The teacher, the rabbi? And then as you and I look back, Emmanuel, God with us, he's going to be mocked. Remember, in John chapter 1, verse 11, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. He came unto his own people, and those who were his own did not receive him. In other words, they rejected him. So here, to have what the 12 would look upon as someone who is respected and have the title, call him whatever you will, rabbi, teacher, good teacher, call him, if you really understand it, Lord. That is, God. And he will be mocked. It's open derision. It's scorn. So, he, in the future, shall be, it'll happen to him, delivered over to the Gentiles, and he, future, shall be mocked. It'll happen to him. And this next word is, I shake my head at it, shall be outraged, shall be spitefully entreated, mistreated. You can see in your notes, I have called it, he will be outrageously mistreated. It's very difficult for me to get a handle on, to run riot, to outrage. That's why I kind of struggled with what to do with it. And I translated it as outrageously, he will be outrageously mistreated. What's interesting is back in Luke chapter 11, verse 45, when Jesus was pointing over here to the Pharisees and saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. And over here, the scribes took offense, and they say, you realize when you scorn them, when you insult them, you are outrageously treating us. You are doing this very thing to us. In other words, they were unhappy campers, I'll tell you that. So outrageously mistreated. More than mock, more than insult. It is incredulous action against someone undeserving of it. And the root of this word is hubris, which I had to actually look up because I've looked at hubris my whole life, and I don't know what it is. Hubris is excessive pride. It's presumption or arrogance, and the word hubris was originally, and I couldn't tell when it said it was originally toward the gods. I couldn't figure out whether it was my pride, my excessive pride against them, or their arrogance against humans. But either way, however you look at it, this is men outrageously treating, the creatures outrageously treating the creator of all things. So, however you want to look at that word, it's outrageous treatment of who he is. We get to the fourth future passive of verse 32, and it's he shall be spit upon. He shall be spit upon. Obviously, that is also a derisive activity, which I'm going to turn quickly back to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 50, verse 6. This is one of the prophecies regarding the suffering servant. I gave my back to those who strike, and my cheeks to those who pull out the beard. I hid not my face from disgrace and spitting. So, 600 years prior to this event, Jesus, this is one of the things that is being fulfilled regarding the Son of Man. We read in Matthew 26, verse 67, "What is your judgment?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that hit you?" And here he stands. Just picture me as Jesus and you coming up and standing up here, and I'm telling you, this will happen. This will be happening to me, and so on. It was public, it was visible, it was tangible, it was a high form of insult. So that's verse 32. And then we get to verse 33, which is the conclusion in two parts. The conclusion in two parts of what Jesus says. He says, "And having scourged him, they will kill him." So there's the conclusion, part one. The scourging, it's interesting because how long does it take? I mean, you can go at home and time yourself, grab a whip, and do this 39 times. And you want to be careful. If you're really good, you know where you want this thing to land. I'm not good, so I don't even know if I could hit the music stand from here. But cat o' nine tails design. Scourging was a horrible thing. The culmination of Jesus' rejection, which we saw in verse 32. The culmination will be scourging. Cat o' nine tails. 39 times, because history tells us they would know the Romans were perfectionists when it came to torture. Hitting 40 times, you would pull out important functioning organs from the body with the 40th strike. The 39th, it was designed to not just make a mark, it breaks the skin. And then it starts removing things. And so when it says scourging, he puts it all, he doesn't give it, he gives it the aorist tense. So the scourging, again, if you do that 39 times, how long does that take? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Make it last? I don't know. But he puts it all into one event. Having scourged, they will kill him. Future only. And it's future, not passive. It's future because it draws attention to who they are. The Gentiles will kill him. They will kill him. So the conclusion from verse 32 to 33a is that having done all those previous derisive, scornful, rejection type of things, culminating in the physical abuse, that they will scourge, and then after they scourge him, they will kill him. After they scourge him, they will kill him. So then, conclusion part 2 of verse 33. And on the third day, he shall rise again. Now, if you look at how I translated it under R in the notes, the third day he will cause himself to be raised up. And I told you that there's important tenses and voices in here. This is the middle voice. And the middle voice takes the person doing the action, and they are involved in the result of that. So middle voice is very important here. If it was passive, and this is just something you need to know. If it was passive, that means that Jesus would have been in the tomb, and then someone outside of himself would have been the agent to raise him up again. But this isn't passive. This is middle voice, which means, and if we go through the scriptures, we'll find that God the Father did indeed raise Jesus from the dead. And the Holy Spirit did indeed raise Jesus from the dead. And Jesus did indeed raise himself from the dead. Very important that we do not miss that second part of the conclusion in verse 33. The horrible conclusion is all the nasty stuff, the disrespect, the rejection, the coming then to the physical, not just blows and the spitting and the rejection and the humiliation, but then the hanging on the cross, which was the final. That's how they ultimately killed him. But then Jesus says, and on the third day I will rise again. On the third day, I will be the agent to be raised up, to raise myself up. So, is there any hope there? You kind of go, man, in the email, however, this portion is short but not sweet. So when we have the communion table here and we remember the body and the blood, keep in mind that the body, all that's happening here in verse 32 and verse 33. This is my body, which is for you. I'll be given over, I'll be mocked, I'll be outrageously mistreated, I'll be spit upon, I'll be scourged, and I'll be killed. My body, which is for you. And then the killing, the blood which was shed on our behalf, that's what we remember. And then we celebrate, we celebrate it every day, but at Easter we celebrate on the third day. I will make myself to be raised again. So we have then the verse 34. And here's the response. And what's funny is, and they grasped not one of these things, and this utterance had been hidden from them, and they were not realizing the things being said. Do you understand what's happening here? And it's like, yeah, because it's repeated 3 times. And this is another one of those things that Luke brilliantly shares with us by the Holy Spirit who led him to do so, is 3 different tenses. First of all, we have the aorist tense. They grasped it not. They didn't get it. And Luke says not one thing. Verse 34 reminds me so much, and it's been years since I've seen it. I don't own it. Last time I saw the movie, The World's Greatest Athlete with Tim Conway. Tim Conway is the assistant to the coach, and they're on the plane, and I can't remember now because it's been probably 30 years since the last time I saw it, but they're either on their way to getting the greatest athlete or they're on the way from having gotten him. And the coach says to Tim Conway, take a note. Okay, so dear so-and-so, and he keeps talking, and Tim Conway is doing the Tim Conway thing. And then the coach turns to him and says, did you get that? He says, how do you spell deer? In other words, you got nothing of it. Nothing. And that's the picture that Luke gives us here. They grasped not one thing. Not one thing did they get. So he looks back on the point in time, and it's a big goose egg. Point 2. This utterance, that is to say, everything Jesus had said from verse 31 through verse 33, this utterance had been hidden from them. Now, that's a perfect tense. In other words, the utterance that he gave now was just an expansion of what he had already said back in chapter 9, which was probably a year ago, that he had said to them, it had been hidden. It's a passive tense. So here they are, and someone else had done the activity of hiding it from them. Now stop and think about that. I know that all of us would like to know whether the Lord is coming, this afternoon, or next year, or 10 years from now. Do you realize how our lives would change if we knew? I mean, we wouldn't even worry about eating. We'd get up here and sing songs and praises, and we'd hug each other, and we'd make phone calls to the unsaved, and Jesus is coming this afternoon, as opposed to, let's say, 10 years from now. We might want to think about actually paying our rent bill this month. So, what if the boys had known? What if God had given them the enlightenment to comprehend everything I just said, and it all fit together? The suffering servant is here. What would they do? Would they try to prevent it? Peter had already told Jesus, hey, everybody else may fall away, but not me. See, I've got a sword. I won't fall away. You hearing me, man? So it had been hidden from them. So there's an exposure. God did it. And the third thing that Luke says, and it's an imperfect tense. And remember, imperfect is a hybrid. It's like you're talking about a horse and you're talking about something else, and what you end up with is a zebra or a platypus or something. You get the idea. The imperfect kind of gives you a general overview of everything that's happening or happened. And they did not comprehend the things being said. So contemplating it wasn't just a point in time, and it wasn't a continuous thing. It was the activity of they thought about what he said, and they still were not getting it. So Luke gives us, if you didn't understand point 1, then I'll give you point 2, and if you didn't understand point 1 and 2, I'll give you point 3. Because basically, they never came to understand it. Not until after the resurrection. So I wondered how this would go today, because it's not a long passage, it's there. But I did want you to see that Jesus is standing on this side of all of those events, and yet we found back in chapter 9, I believe it was 8, 9, that he set his face like a flint to head to Jerusalem. All these things are going to happen to him. I know all of you in here have been to a meeting you didn't want to show up at. But you had to go into it. You just had to. But theoretically, it wasn't where everybody had guns but you. So this is where everybody else has guns, knives, hand grenades, and machine guns, and you don't. Of course, Jesus, it's not the same with Jesus. He did this willingly, knowing that it was for us that he was doing it. So we have Jesus, the declaration and preparation to enter Jerusalem. And next week we're going to be dealing with the blind man. I think it's blind Bartimaeus, but I'm not going to say that yet. So it's still, Jericho is about, what did I figure, 12 miles to the northeast of Jerusalem. And it's on the way from having crossed from Perea, having crossed the Jordan River, it's on the way to Jerusalem. So next week we're still outside of Jerusalem, but when we get to chapter 19 we'll end up being in Jerusalem. So let this passage perk in you. Remember what Jesus accomplished, and he knew he was going to do it for you. Lord God, this morning we traveled down a path that was short but definitely not sweet. I guess the only good sweet thing about it is that we get to be, based upon what Jesus did, we get to be a part of your family. We're in the family of God. We're inheritors. We're your children. We're brothers by the blood, by the sacrifice of Jesus. And yet we stand here with him. We stand with the 12 and we listen to what he said. And it's like, oh, wow. Would we do that? Would we do that? Well, Jesus did it. So, Lord, may this cause us to appreciate our Savior more and more. May we bow at his feet, as we sang about earlier. May we worship him. May we love him. And may we grow in our daily lives because of him. I commit our way to you in the name of the Master. Amen.